Hey everybody, welcome back to Pro AV Today. Today it seems like every single computer, meeting space, hospital room, you name it, it seems like everything has a connectivity and collaboration tool in it. But one of the challenges in AV that we've seen over the last few years is that our buying community has changed so drastically, whether that's in new and emerging markets or just demands from a technology perspective. And I brought on one of my favorite people in the industry today, Nyere Hollingsworth from Under Armour, to chat a little bit more about that and bring this incredible perspective of a buyer. Nyere, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really look forward to it.
Look, as I mentioned kind of briefly in the intro, Nyere, the buying community in AV and even the decision maker and buyer in general has shifted pretty dramatically in the last 5 to 10 years. And you've seen that, I'm sure, on the enterprise side as well. Just in a nutshell, where would you say that we are as an AV buyer community right now in the life cycle of really all of the industry?
Well, in the life cycle of the industry, I'd say we are definitely kind of having a little bit of our second life in a lot of ways. I think there's been a cycle of you buy a certain amount of systems, do the, whatever that life cycle management aspect of it is. You learn from that and you repeat all over again. And so, I would say over the course of my career, this is kind of like the third generation, so to speak. I've been doing this about 20 years of rooms and technology cycles that I've been going through. Early stages were a lot of analog and, the early stages of IP-based video conferencing products. Second life, second generation of that, I would say, was a lot of on-premise technology from an infrastructure perspective. And more digitized AV, so getting out of the analog and having more digitized products, and the early stages of HD-based T and some of your encoding and decoding technologies and things of that nature. And now we're in the software-based world of our existence. And so, we're less focused on hardware, at least I am, and I would imagine a lot of my colleagues in similar positions are. Less focused on hardware and more focused on software and services and solutions that bring it all together. So, to me, it's like I say, a third generation of kind of buying cycles in my career. And, it's actually one of the most exciting times to me to be in the business.
Well, you better watch who you say that around if you're not a hardware guy. But you're right, honestly, especially as we look at some of these emerging markets in AV, and I feel like the ones we talk about all the time are education, healthcare, hospitality. But you've also got the applications even far beyond that, even including things like judicial purposes and even more. What we've seen is that those new communities maybe don't have quite the technical acumen that some of our AV buying and AV end user communities had previously, which in my opinion is driving a lot of the software-based trend that you're seeing right now. Talk to me a little bit about some of these emerging markets. As somebody who works at Under Armour, you see everything from lifestyle to sports and entertainment and everything in between. And you guys, in a lot of ways, are kind of part of some of those emerging communities. Talk to me a little bit about how that's made an impact for the AV manufacturer.
Well, I think it's like we were just touching on. It's less hardware centric, and a lot of the buyers that I've seen, engaging in these products are definitely not necessarily coming from the AV community, which changes the dynamic a little bit. Because these are people that are used to buying computers. They're used to buying, software technologies. They're used to buying those kinds of things that people would say traditional and core IT. And so engaging with the AV community is a little bit different. And comes with its own set of pluses and minuses, in my opinion. On the plus side, again, they have definitely a higher demand for interoperability and interconnected services and tools and technologies. On the negative side of that, they just really don't understand the nuances of real-time communications in these products, and the nuanced fact that the AV industry is really tiny in the grand scheme of things, and so the demands on manufacturers to deliver to some of these customers who are in a lot of ways very new to them. There are a lot of churches and a lot of court systems and and what have you, hospitals, and they've never had somebody like me on staff. So they don't really know the commercial AV industry very much at all. And so again, they don't really understand that, an order on the size that may look really large to you, the Army is doing one 10 times larger, and guess who gets in front of the line? Especially as we talk about the supply chain challenges that we are experiencing at this present moment in time. And so that evolution, I think, is actually a good thing with all the pluses and minuses, because it means the market is growing, right? We used to be, the manufacturers and the integrators were marketing to government and really high-end corporations that could afford those technologies. And now you got the lowest of the SMBs engaging in this because they have to. Video conferencing and real-time communications used to be a nice to have. Now it is a fundamental requirement of every business that's out there. And so you got a different set of customers that you can market to. Which again, those that understand that are going to do well. Those that continue to resist that and keep trying to sell to those, really high-end exclusive marketplaces, they're going to struggle for the next few years.
Well, and you bring up a really nice point too, and it's one of the conversations I have pretty regularly in my day job here at Market Scale, is that a lot of these newer markets don't have an established channel. And what I mean by that is they're not used to working with integrators. They're not used to not being able to go to Amazon to buy whatever they need. So they don't, right? If I'm a house of worship and I'm a small business, I'm going to go to the place where I can get it the fastest and I can plug it in, right? And what has happened, unfortunately, right? I don't necessarily support that, but what has happened is that's forced our end user communities to be the experts on IT and installation integration in their own company. And what that does, if you're skipping over the traditional integrator channels, that actually puts a lot of burden on the manufacturer, right? From a training perspective, from an engagement standpoint, from a support perspective. Talk about even in Under Armour, right? There are different requirements for hardware manufacturers and things like that. But talk about how the hardware manufacturer has an obligation to the end user.
Well, this is something that's been near and dear to my heart for a long time, because, I was once that end user that had to do all, I still am, but that's my whole job. And I think the manufacturer community can do a lot more to support people like me in that regard, and offer that training, to those that may not know or may not understand why their product is so much more expensive than the other product that's out there in the marketplace. The AV community in general has done a poor job of educating its end user base. A lot of the training that I got, I had to seek out on my own and at the recommendation of integrators, and I'm glad that I did so. But in today's world, you can't rely exclusively on that level of initiative from the end user. You definitely got to be a lot more in your face about ensuring that they utilize those products the way that they were the way that they were designed and intended to be used. Because what you end up with in a lot of ways is, user buys, product X upon the recommendation of, some consultant. Product X gets installed, and the user is not happy with the way that it was installed, because whoever installed it probably wasn't trained on how to properly configure it, and things of that nature. And so here you are, a manufacturer, with a black eye for your product when you didn't have anything to do with the way that it was installed and configured. And it's working just fine the way that you had intended for it to be designed. So I think the manufacturers community can get a little bit smarter about putting just some simple YouTube videos or something to that effect. Really simple, really, targeted and focused to say, hey, this is the product, this is what it does, so forth and so on, so that people can be a lot more educated and understand what they're buying. Because, me, I've been doing this for a long time, so I know where to look, I know how to look, I know who to ask for. But if this were about 20 years ago, earlier in my career, I didn't have a clue. And so, it was just, and I didn't have YouTube then either, so I had
YouTube didn't have YouTube 20 years ago.
Exactly. So there was just a lot of, trial and error in a lot of ways on a lot of things. But I think the buyer these days especially with the speed at which these decisions are made and the speed at which this technology matures, definitely needs a lot more just readily available at the fingertips to really make some educated decisions, about what products are going to best serve their organizations.
Well, look, as we talk a little bit more about kind of the enterprise installation, we hinted at it a minute ago, but admittedly, that's where a lot of the dollars are spent, obviously, is the B2B side. Obviously, at a company like Under Armour, where you guys are enterprise buyers, you guys roll out tools, things like that, you weren't immune to some of the challenges of collaboration, in a pre-COVID and obviously now post-COVID world. Talk to me a little bit what you guys look for in not only a hardware manufacturing partner, but even an integrator partner as a buyer.
Today is, do you have product?
Yes. I had that coming to me. I should have known. Yeah. Yes.
Today is, do you have product? But essentially, do you have a product that is going to move the needle on what, I hate using the term, but on hybrid, collaboration experience.
He used it. He did it.
Yeah, I did. And I hate myself for it already. But, it's a term that most people will think they understand. But let me give you where my take is on that. I look at my job today as making the office make sense, because gone are the days that people are just going to show up, punch the clock, sit down at a desk, do whatever, check emails, make phone calls, whatever they do throughout the course of an 8-hour day, punch the clock again and go home. That day is over. You can do all of that at home, and you're going to be more efficient doing it because you can take those hour, 2 hour, 3 hours that you would have sat in traffic each way or both ways, and actually get some work done, right? So why am I coming to the office? Well, I'm coming to the office to meet other people that are coming to the office, and so when we come to the office to meet other people that come to the office, we're going to have some meeting in a room or maybe in a lounge space or an atrium or what have you. But inevitably, somebody that's not physically present is going to need to participate in that conversation. And I think, it's my job to figure out how to integrate collaboration tools in those spaces, integrate collaboration tools and also environmental tools, and making it a safe and secure environment for the people that decide to meet in a face-to-face basis. Because that aspect of working is not going to go away. However, if that experience is not great on both sides, it's not worth it. You've wasted your time. And so to that end, historically we built collaboration spaces exclusively for the people in the room. We totally ignored those people that were not in the room. We didn't care what it sounded like. We didn't care what people looked like on the camera. We didn't care how the space was lit. We just D for done. We got a video conference system. It turns on the mics. You can hear them, period. You can see people, period. It's a little fuzzy, This audio isn't that great because the HVAC is blowing right over the microphone, but it's there. We're done. See you later. Let's move on to the next project. That's not acceptable anymore. We all are demanding much more because of this kind of face-to-face interaction that we've gotten used to over the course of the past couple of years. And so our designs for these spaces has to change. They've got to get a lot more targeted and focused on both sides of the equation, to ensure that, it makes sense for those people that are in the room to be there, and for those that need to jump into the room, that they can be an equal and active participant in that conversation.
That is the most incredible, in a nutshell, I think, experience from a buyer right now that we can have as a community, especially when you talk about having to create value for employees, having to create value for your real estate, not your residential spaces. But, since you brought up supply chain, I'm gonna go there. I don't like to go there because I know it's temporary, but
we'll take a brief pause there.
Yeah. We can. This is a good question. It is, because a lot of manufacturers are asking this. What would you say as a buyer is more important to you? Is it I need it by next week, or I need something that's actually going to work long term? Which would you say is more important?
I need something that's going to work long term, because
how long would you wait for it though?
That all depends on the pressure that I'm getting internally. But the reality is, it's like, some organizations, because I've been a part of 2 organizations the past 18 months, because my tenure at Under Armour has been very short. And so I go back to what I was doing at my previous organization and what I'm doing at Under Armour now. My previous organization, they're still trying to move the needle on some of the projects that I was working on before I left, because that's when it was really starting to get sticky and things were not becoming available. But they owned both of their buildings, or they own all of their real estate in the main headquarters. And so there wasn't any pressure to, move into a new space, worry about a lease that's coming up or anything like that. So that organization, could reasonably wait a little while to ensure that they got the right products in place. On this side of the equation, we're trying to move out of space, trying to move to a new headquarters space. And so there are a lot of dominoes that have to fall in line. And that's what's driving a lot of our timeline. As you talk about corporate leases and things of that nature, because every company in the world right now is trying to get out of commercial real estate space because they don't need as much as they previously had. And in our situation in particular, we've got plans to build a whole new corporate headquarters and the like. And so, it's incumbent upon us to be responsible to our shareholders and make judicious decisions about our real estate holdings. So that tends to drive our timelines. And of course, that tends to drive the amount of pressure that that drives the decision on that continuum that you described, whether it need it now or does it work. For us to make those decisions. So in this regard, it tends to be more of a need it now, but I still need it to work because I've got to support it. It's my name on the line for when that thing gets installed and, heaven forbid we have a huge problem and I've got to go back to the drawing board and redesign a solution that we've already, we recently installed. And so that makes it harder for me to do what I do. It's made for some very interesting conversations over the course of the past few months. But fortunately, I have some very good partners that I'm doing business with right now that we're just getting creative. We're figuring it out and we're trying to make the best out of a bad situation that we all know, is probably not going to get better anytime soon. It's probably going to get worse before it actually gets better.
Well, looking at the integrator manufacturer perspective, what are some of the things that they can do in the meantime while you're waiting on product?
Again, going back to that training piece and helping us understand that, if there's a way that they can make older hardware do a little bit more, that would be helpful because, I've been sitting on a ton of gear that's, reached what we would deem its normal life cycle. Now it's not looking so bad anymore, when I can't get the newer stuff, so help me make that kind of stuff work. At the end of the day, just, at any integrated partner that I've ever done business with, my measure of whether or not I'll do business with them again is when I pick up the phone and say, I need help. Will you answer? And will you come help me? For those that have done that throughout my career, I continue to do business with them to this day. Those that haven't, I don't. And so, and that goes for manufacturers and integrators alike, because it's, like I mentioned before, it's a very small community. I've got contacts in my Rolodex that are CEOs, COOs of some of the major corporations that we have, from integrators to manufacturers. So I could make that call if I wanted to, but I don't really want to have to. I want to call the person that I'm dealing with on a regular basis and have them help me out. And I think to the extent that, we can train our staff collectively, to just support each other in that regard, I think that's a win-win for everybody in this, because like I say, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. We need to learn how to live with the stuff that we have, because we're probably not going to get anything new for a little while. And continue to be smart and innovative about how we leverage and utilize those solutions to support our organizations.
Well, that brings up a really interesting point, Nyere, is that in a lot of cases, you're seeing hardware manufacturers, integrators, and distributors have to, I don't want to say manufacture, create ways to be more valuable to the end user. But as we approach essentially what I'll call a technology ceiling, as far as, look, you can only make cameras so good, you can only make the resolution so good, the audio at the end of the day can only be so good before it just stops creating more value for the end user. you're seeing a lot of manufacturers and even integrators and distributors moving to some of those non-tangible ways of whether it's support, whether it's subscription services, whether it's firmware updates, whatever. What are some of those things as an end user that you want to see more of, whether it is that training piece or not?
One of the biggest things actually that, I don't think we've cracked the nut on is just really asset management and being able to track what we actually do have in the environment and where it is on a life cycle perspective, and help us make those decisions about replacing and repairing and replacing spaces and tools and technologies and things of that nature. I think there's a huge opportunity there for the organization that can finally get that right. There have been several manufacturers that have tried to do it, abandon ship and so forth. But if somebody could really get smart about making that an enterprise-wide solution, I think that would be very helpful. Again, as we have to try to kind of make the things that we have work, at least let me know what I actually do have in the environment. Because I can tell you 100% visibility into all the products that I have. I don't think I've ever had that a single moment in my career.
I can vouch for you, except for when we're kids, maybe with a small PA system and a microphone. Right. I'm with you. I don't know that any IT manager, AT decision maker, AV decision maker has ever had full insight into their actual house. I'll tell you what, though, what's funny is you go ask any rental house and they dang sure know where all their stuff is.
Oh, absolutely.
They figured it out. We can figure it out as a community.
Yeah. Because in a lot of and you hit the nail on the head. Like there's somebody out there that's got that answer already and is working in that space, but just doesn't really understand the corporate landscape, because in the rental space it's always moving, right? When corporate, you would think it's typically all fixed, and so it should be easier to track it. But no, this is absolutely not the case. So that's one thing I'm looking for. As you mentioned before, we are definitely reaching the limits of what our human physiology can accept in terms of receiving this media and content. And so, I don't need all the Ks, in my displays. And, I definitely, I think the audio pieces, as we get smart about compression algorithms, and things of that nature, if we can do that over smaller pipes, that would be awesome. And I think, and I've seen a lot of that, even over the course of the past 3 years. A lot of different companies are coming to the market with products that are just every year making it better and better to get higher quality over a smaller pipe. Even as we on the network side expand some of these networks and are now embarking on SD-WAN technology and some zero trust technologies and things of that nature. Some of the limitations that we used to have regarding being on the corporate network are starting to fall away as we enter this zero trust world. And so to that end, now that my information security people are getting more comfortable with this stuff being on the network, can you make it work? Can we truly be converged? And I think that's a huge opportunity that's still on the table, is really getting products out there that are can deal with lossy networks, can deal with being in an environment where the network engineering team might not be as smart about pushing these packets around in a lossless manner and being able to handle that. I think like I said, I think there's a lot of opportunity there to make some real magic happen in that regard.
Well, Nyere, I'll give you the last word and the crystal ball here. You talked about AV, what I'll call 3.0. What is AV 4.0?
AV 4.0, I think, I am excited about where we're going with AR technology, not so much VR, but AR technology is really interesting to me right now. Because, I have an Oculus here and I played around with it, and I really enjoy that experience that I get when I play poker with the Oculus, right? And as I'm, and I also observe my children and how they deal with that technology. And the more and more I use it, the more and more I think, man, if this thing gets to a certain level of weight and kind of aesthetic to where it's not so painful to have it on your face for, 2 or 3 hours at a time, and the battery life, extends beyond, I would say 2 or 3 hours, you can kiss flat panel displays goodbye. Why would you ever buy one? You could just put the glasses over your face and have a truly immersive experience. I think that's where we're going is how do we create those truly immersive experiences so that it makes it just like you are in the room? Because, again, this interaction isn't going away. My kids will demand that out of any employer that they engage with as they enter the workforce over the course of the next 10 years. And so who's going to help us get there? How are we going to get there? I'm really looking forward to that promise in that regard, because I think, again, there's a lot of opportunity there. And if we can get it right, and I think we can, it's going to be an exciting time again.
Well, Nyere, I love your optimism. I love your vision and your participation in AV. It's been incredible. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know that you were one of the people who's welcomed me into the community so graciously. So a big thank you from all of us over here at Pro AV Today and across the community. I know you've been doing a lot of great work for a long time. But hey, thanks so much, Nyere, again for joining us today. We very much appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it and look forward to doing it again.
And thank you guys for watching us. Tune in next week.